All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order, please. Commissioner Brown, if you would do us the honor of giving us the invocation.
Well, thank you for another day, for another opportunity you've given us. Thank you most of all for Jesus' birth to celebrate. We just ask for your leadership and guidance in all that we do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Now for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Faber, give us the honor of reciting the Town of Siler City mission statement.
To advance a framework for our success through balanced governance, dynamic partnerships, and an engaged community.
Thank you. Commissioner HAIGES, the recitation of the Town of Siler City vision statement.
Siler City is a safe, prosperous, and vibrant community where diversity, innovation, and education drive success in a globally competitive society.
Thank you. Rolly, are there any adjustments to the agenda?
No, Mayor Pro Tem, there are none.
Thank you. So I would like to have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll make the motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any noes? Okay, next is public comment. Is there anyone? We have one person, two people. Remember that each speaker is asked to limit the comments to 3 minutes, and the requested total amount of time would be 15 minutes or less. So, if you would, when I call your name, please stand and, of course, tell me your name and your address. I hope I say it correctly. Mike Cowell, please.
Mike Cowell, and I live over in Pittsburgh, 275 the Church Road. Madam Mayor, Commissioners, Honorable Commissioners, I've just recently retired this last month, and I wanted the opportunity to be able to come over and thank you all for everything you did to make my tenure here successful. I remember when I came to Wren 12 years ago, we were sort of a sleepy little, somewhat worn out library, as it were. And over the period of time, we've seen several renovations. The county hardly provided the money. You folks, Siler City, renovated this library on 2 occasions. I think about all the changes we've seen. We had a tremendous staff here at the library, and that shall go on. A caring community. I love Siler City. Siler City is a very caring community. And forward-thinking leadership. Where do you begin? I think about Mr. Bryan. He's not here now, and he's moved on. But man, he saw a vision for the library, and he really worked at it. Terry Green, who is retired, Terry worked hand in glove. We were just so blessed to have him. He was just always here when we needed him. Mr. Jack, he had visions for this place when I first came over here. He was actually a young man. But there were just so many different plans were implemented. The first renovation was awesome. I mean, everything inside was completely changed. This was a storeroom, and it became the meeting room. The colors, just the lighting, everything that the town did. And then in the second stage, after Hurricane Florence, we had the major leak. Came in and completely renovated the roof, upstairs, cleansed the building, 50 years of just all kinds of trash upstairs. And Mr. Roy, you sure saw a vision for that. And I appreciate your vision and the fact that you continue to do that and make the place healthy. Mr. Chris, Mr. Pete, just everything we could ask for has been done. I think of Mayor John and Mrs. C and their great love for the library. They exhibited that. And I just want to let you know that the library here is so vital. It's become a social hub for a lot of folks, not only folks, but folks, as you know, we don't have much broadband over here. So it's a place for students to come and study. It's a place where we've seen growth, education, job preparation programs for young people. Fatherhood classes are held here on a regular basis. A lot of social meetings. And think about all the folks who have to do community service, and they have the opportunity to come here, and we've been able to work with them, and they've been able to return something and learn something. And the chief police force has just been also renovated in the last several years, and we appreciate that. I think about SNAC and how the town supported us with the feeding of the folks. And over the 3 years that we were able to be a part of that, this community, folks working from the city as well as our staff, we fed 223,000 meals over the summers. That is significant. It's major. And I just love Siler City. So again, I just wanted to say thank you, leadership. Thank you to the community. I'd like to say thank you to my staff for some of the happiest and most fulfilling years and days of my public work in all these many years. Siler City is one of the happiest memories I have of that. So I just wanted to take a minute and thank y'all and thank everybody who's been involved. It's a good group. I hope we relocate over here. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Kyle. All right, next we have Donald Mathis. Let's state your name and address, please.
Mathis, 909 12th Street. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Board. Hate to do this right after such an elaborate, I guess we would call going away party, retirement. But on March 27th of this year, we had one of the biggest rains that we've had in recent memory. I live in the area known as Lincoln Heights. Much of Lincoln Heights flooded during that period. And so I called your city manager and we got together and we started to look at it. Even the mayor came out and we started looking at it. But the problem is, here it is, December. Now, the actual work of cleaning out these ditches and things that were obstructing this water did not start until November. So we're looking at from March to November. And I just did a walk around the neighborhood today. And there's very little has been done. And what was done was half done. Now, my great-grandfather lives right next to my parents. When they cleaned out the ditch in front of Publix, they tore up the steps. Now, the steps are older than anybody in this room. My great-grandfather laid those. My problem is, and my question is, why is it taking so long? We know that flooding exists over there. And when is this work going to be completed? Quite frankly, I'm tired of having meetings with it. I really am. But this needs to be done because it is a problem. I have pictures here. There is standing, we hadn't had rain in several weeks now. It's standing water. The water is not moving. And it's not moving because it's obstructed. And so I just like to know from this board, are you as concerned as I am about this issue? Because something has to be done. And I thank you for your time. And if you would like to view the pictures, I'd be more than happy to share it. Because as I said, this is an issue and it's not a new issue. And when you are told, well, they're working on it, and I go out and look, I was even told that Commissioner Boone called and said that they're doing something. Wherever it is, I can't find it. Because I looked today. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. No one else signed up to speak? Moving on.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the organizational items. 5.1 of the 2022 calendars, and I'm gonna turn that over to Roy.
Mayor Pro Tem Board, tonight we are moving through the organizational items as we normally do at the first meeting in December. And the first item on the agenda is 5.1, which is on page 41. And this lists all of the holidays for and/or all of the meeting schedules for all of the committees within the town. The only one that we do have a change to and are asking the board to consider before approving is on page 44. And this is the budget calendar. If you come down to the April 14th meeting that was placed on the calendar, that is the Thursday prior to Good Friday, which is a holiday. So what staff is recommending is that that date be changed to April 28th.
So Roy, just one question on that.
Yes.
So given the 28th, then that workshop, assuming that it's needed, that gives you 14 days to present, to complete and present the budget message. Is that going to give you enough time to do that?
Yes, sir. I do feel like that will be sufficient time. Yeah, we've been on tight timelines
Mhm.
before, especially last year going through the pandemics and all of that onset. So we feel like that will be sufficient.
Fair enough.
So everyone's had a chance to look at the calendars. So if you'll look at,
Yes, ma'am. Just need to approve the calendars, following page 42 through 49.
need a motion to approve the 2022 calendars.
Make a motion to approve the 2022 calendars with the amendment to the budget calendar, moving April 14th to April 28th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, next is 5.2 is the board appointments, which we have several. I'll list them: the Chatham Chamber of Commerce, Chatham County Affordable Housing, Chatham County Climate Change Committee, the NCDOT, Transportation Advisory Committee, the Siler City Development Organization, the Triangle J Council of Governments. So I'm gonna turn this over to Lloyd also. That starts on page 50.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Board, this is also something that we go through annually. And many times the ones that are serving as the current members decide that they would like to remain on the committee. And but it just needs to be stated in the motion. You can make one motion, but for each of these committees, as an example, the Chamber of Commerce, if Commissioner Brown desires to stay, and if that's who the board wants to represent the town, then you just need to state Commissioner Brown serving on the Chatham Chamber of Commerce and moving down the line. The only one that I do want to direct the board's attention to is the Chatham County Climate Change Committee. This is one that Ron Dameron was appointed to, and I'm not sure what year that was. However, he has been unable to attend and serve. If the board, if one of the commissioners do not want to serve on this board, what we can do is hold this one open and bring someone back as a recommendation to the board for approval at a later date.
All right. Let's start with the Chatham Chamber of Commerce, and currently serving as member is Commissioner Brown. Are you still currently interested in doing that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we're good with that. All right, secondly, is the Chatham County Affordable Housing Committee, and Commissioner Price, you're currently serving, and as an alternate is Roy. Are you still interested, Commissioner Price?
Yes.
Okay, and Roy?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So what does the board think about bringing possibly somebody from the community to serve on the Chatham County Climate Change Committee? Because, you know, we always have people that's interested in becoming members.
I think
From some community.
having somebody from the community that likes the town.
I think that would be good too. So bring it back, Roy. We'll bring that back. Will we advertise it in the paper, or how do we do that?
We normally do not advertise
Okay.
for committees that are not established by the town. But we will certainly open the lines of communication and talk with individuals and see who may be willing. And if the board has anyone that you may want to recommend, please do so.
So,
How long has it been? I know Ron was on it. How long has it been? I didn't know he was not being able to attend. It's been a while since he's.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that timeline looks like. I do know that I was contacted by the county manager and just asked if there was someone else that would like to represent the town on the committee.
His wife called me tonight, and indicated that it's where they are, there's not a lot of accessibility for broadband. Meetings have been by Zoom. And if they go back to in person, he could attend, but as long as they're by Zoom, he can't. So I'm assuming they're still by Zoom.
so he could possibly still be interested if or not.
Yeah.
If it goes back to in person,
In
but
person.
if it stays Zoom, then I'm told he doesn't have the abilities to participate.
Yeah, 'cause I do know that when they were having face-to-face meetings, he was a valuable member to represent town of Siler City on the committee. But yeah,
Maybe we can find out what their intentions are moving forward. If they're gonna go back to in person.
Yeah.
Stay Zoom.
And see if he still is committed to doing it.
I will be glad to verify.
Next, we're talking about Mississippi Department of Transportation and the Triangle Area Rural Planning Organization, TARPO. And currently, Commissioner Brown, you are serving as our representative. Are you still interested in that also?
Yes, ma'am, if it pleases the board.
Next, we have the Siler City Development Organization, and Commissioner Brown is also currently serving. Are you still interested in that?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And then the Triangle J Council of Government, Commissioner HAIGES, you're currently serving as the delegate, and Commissioner Fagley, you're the alternate delegate. Are y'all both still interested or not?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I actually, I've also been as an elected official and a delegate to that board, and now on the Foreign Trade Zone 93 Tariffs Rates and Review Board. So I'm the vice chair of that board and step up to the chair next year. So
Yeah. Siler City.
so yeah, Siler City's got some good representation.
That's great.
I know that.
I'm so glad. Thank you all for agreeing to continue to serve as members and on these committees for Siler City. I know it takes a lot of time. We really do appreciate it. And so now, Roy, since everyone has agreed, can we do one motion to, or we have to name each?
Yes, ma'am. If you would, just name the person for which committee, but you can do that in one motion.
Okay, so I'm gonna name it and then we'll have a motion. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so for the Chatham Chamber of Commerce, Commissioner Brown will be our representative. For the Chatham County Affordable Housing, Commissioner Price will be our representative, and Mr. Roy Lynch will be our alternate. We will revisit the Chatham County Climate Change Committee. And then the NC Department of Transportation and Parkway, Commissioner Brown is going to be our representative. For the Siler City Development Organization, again, Commissioner Brown. And for the Triangle J, Commissioner HAIGES is our representative and delegate, and Commissioner Taylor will be the alternate. So could I, have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all so much. Next, we go into the fire department officers, which have already been elected on page 51. And Roy?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Board, each year the volunteer fire department goes through a process to appoint their board. And this year's recommendations from Chief Murphy are on page 52 of your agenda package. So if the board is in agreement and so desires, they can approve the fire department officers for the fiscal year 2022.
Make a motion, we approve the Siler City Fire Department officers for fiscal year 2022 as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? On that note, I would like to ask, have they decided whether they're going to have any type of Christmas get together this year? I know last year they did not.
It is my understanding that they will have something for the volunteers themselves.
But not as like before.
Yes, ma'am. That's my understanding currently.
Okay. All right, next on 5.4, we have the legislative agenda, which is on page 53 and 54. And that again will be turned over to Roy.
Mayor Pro Tem Board, each year, the commissioners have asked that staff present to the board all of the North Carolina League of Municipality legislative agenda items. This year, for your information, on page 54 are the legislative goals as presented. So what we do is ask if there are any specific policy issues that you would ask the staff to engage in an advocacy effort and to support on behalf of the Board of Commissioners. Again, this is an informational item, but a time for you to indicate either way, if there's anything you want us to advocate.
So there's no motion needed.
Then,
But once again, I think we'd like to engage them about our tier system that we get looked over so much. But I know it's a hot topic and we've had that on there before, but I've not seen any action on it yet. But I think that we need to keep hammering that nail.
I agree. Commissioner Bowman, you have a question?
Racial equity and the vibrant communities in that. I think those are some key things.
I know I've been advocating, especially for the vacant and abandoned properties with legal tools and funding. That's something that's been sort of a hot topic for us. But I would also like to see them under the healthy finances, expanding incentives and funding for local economic development. I mean, with the announcement of the electric battery facility in Liberty, I would like to see something with more substantial for us, so we can better compete with our mega site.
I agree. We all agree 1,000%.
We need to, under resilient infrastructure, we need to hit that broadband.
Yep.
Connectivity in this town is
That is
terrible.
Just Ron Dameron's a shining example there.
So it's you have what you need in that.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I do.
All right, next is the 5.5, the training opportunities, which is page 55. And again, this is just informational context, right?
Yes, ma'am. If there are any of these opportunities that you would like to entertain, any of these courses that you would like to attend, if you would please let the clerk know, and she will schedule you for these as they become available. Most of these are, of course, on an annual basis and normally scheduled around the same times each year. Yes, ma'am.
All right, moving on, we have a presentation on 6.1, the general fund capital improvement plan, which is on page, starts on page 56, and this is Roy. He said it would be brief.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Board, tonight, staff is bringing back to the board an update of the general fund CIP based on the most recent activities that over the last couple of months, and we've gone through and updated with some additional funding. Some of the items that we had in the original CIP that was presented back in the spring have been purchased through the normal annual budgeting process. So therefore, they have been removed. And we have just updated based upon current information. And as stated in the memo, tonight, this is just an update for the board. You do have the option to approve the CIP as stated. However, I know that back in the spring, we had conversations about holding or potentially holding a special meeting for this so that there could be more detail given, questions asked, and time for that process. So as again, I indicated, there are many items. And if you do want to hold a special meeting and or set aside the majority of time at a future board meeting, we need to do that potentially in January so that we can use this CIP as a tool moving forward as we go through the fiscal year 23 budget process. So I'll turn it, yes, sir, Commissioner.
I mean, if the board's amenable to, I think we would need to do it early January to get out in front of this. Not mid or late, but I think we need to be early January.
One of the recommendations that I had is the January 3rd meeting is a very light agenda at this point. We certainly could focus at that meeting on the details and spend some time answering questions that the board would have and or make sure that the department heads are available as well. Because a lot of this, came from as far as when it was scheduled out, what they were looking to accomplish, was all discussed early on in the year. So we want to make sure that their priorities are set as well and conveyed to the board and can do that.
Can you keep the rest of the docket clear? Or is it, you said it's pretty clear. So can you keep it without anything else coming on it and just put this on it?
We can make it very light. There will be, yes, there's still public comment at the first meeting, and we do have one presentation scheduled. But other than that, I think we can pretty much focus on this. But what I would like to do at this point is turn it over to Todd Welker from Davenport so that he can provide the board with the updated information.
That's great. Thank you. Nice to be with y'all again. Ty Welker with Davenport Company. We serve as the town's financial advisor and have been working with Roy and his team on the capital planning project. This is just on the general fund, so not talking about utilities. At least I'm not talking about utilities today. And as Roy alluded to, we had last presented back in March. So this has been updated to reflect 2020 audit actuals and estimates for 21, as well as a refined capital improvement plan. And I'm going to try and stay out of the weeds. We were focused a little bit more on that back in March when we were introducing the topic. But what we're trying to talk about here today is the challenge that we're facing, which is finding ways to fund your capital improvement program. And for now, we're focused on about a 10-year period through 2030, so a little bit less. And where we're trying to provide some guidance are on two topics. One is on capacity. So that's a theoretical question. Capital funding capacity. Does the town have capacity to take on projects, whether that be using cash or fund balance, or taking on additional debt to fund some of these projects? That's not talking about how to pay for it, just simply where you stand right now, your financial picture, do you have that capacity to take on those additional projects? I'm going to cut to the chase. The answer is yes, but I'll show you why in a minute here. Then we're going to focus a little bit more on the numbers about affordability. And what we're looking at here, when you look at the projects you have listed, there are a number of areas where potential grants have been identified. I know that's a continuing effort to try and find those avenues. What we're left with is what your share is. That's a moving piece. We understand it's going to change as you move through time. But right now it's about 20 million worth of projects. And we've tried to simplify it and said, okay, if you fund that with a mixture of cash and debt, what does that look like using your existing budget and what you're currently setting aside to fund debt service and capital, and what's the gap? And there is a gap because it's 20 million of projects over this 10-year horizon, and we're trying to show you what that might look like. And I think hopefully that'll be helpful for you as you think about this, whether it be refining the project list, whether it be shifting the timing, whether it be identifying other funding avenues. It's a work in progress, but that's kind of our goal today, to walk through that. So flipping through here, picking up with the capacity, theoretical capacity. Can you take on additional projects either by issuing debt or funding it with cash? Like I said, the answer is yes, but what we're starting with here on page 60 of your packet is setting the table. One way we look at capacity is comparing you to your peers, right? And what we have here is looking at it from a credit rating standpoint. Credit ratings are not something the town currently carries. You had a credit rating a while back. That's typically assigned if you went out and did a project funded in the public markets. You very well heard of Moody's or Standard & Poor's. You might go get a credit rating if you're doing a big project issuing debt in the public markets. We're not talking about that today, but we do have nice access to your peers, both nationally and in North Carolina, who do have credit ratings, and it allows us to pull down a lot of data to show you how you stack up versus those peers. So that's what this page is showing. It's showing on the left-hand side the number of AAA, AA, and single A cities and towns in the nation. There are a lot of them. And then in North Carolina, your AAA, AA, and single A peers. Those are broad buckets of credit ratings. AAA is the highest you can be. AA is a very good credit rating. It's right just below AAA. Single A is kind of in the middle of the investment grade category. That's where we drew the line because that's where your peers are in North Carolina, single A being at the bottom of that list. Looking at your existing debt just for a minute for some perspective here, once again, general fund, your existing debt is paid off within this 10-year horizon. And most of it relates to your rolling stock, your capital leases that you've been doing generally on an annual basis. You did do a fire pumper truck installment back in 2019 that had a 10-year amortization, so a little bit longer. That is what is being paid down, and we're just simply showing you what that repayment schedule looks through 2029, assuming you took on no new debt, right? So it's right at about $350,000 fiscal 22, and it steps down as your various pieces pay off. The next few pages I'm going to go through quickly, just looking at these peers, just focused on debt for a minute, your capacity relative to your peers. 3 of the key financial ratios related to debt. One is payout, how quickly you pay back your debt. From a lender's perspective, the sooner you pay it back, the better. You pay back all your debt within a 10-year horizon. So this is kind of an industry standard metric, which is your 10-year payout ratio. How quickly do you pay it back? You're as good as you can get because all your debt is paid back in 10 years. You look on the right-hand side of the page, this is comparing you at the top, that gold bar, to your national peers and your North Carolina peers in the darker green. You are the best there is, compare very favorably with your peers. Similar story on the next page. This is measuring your debt as a percentage of your tax base, your assessed valuation, measuring your leverage or how much debt you have outstanding. At the end of fiscal 21, beginning of fiscal 22, your ratio was 0.18. So your total debt outstanding, once again, just in the general fund of about 1.1 million, divided by your tax base of 616 million is 0.18%. You compare very favorably with your peers on that metric as well. So once again, just theoretically, do you have the capacity to take on debt and still be within the framework of your peers? The answer is yes. And then one last metric, debt service to expenditures. This is the percentage debt service takes up of your budget. In 22, that was right at about 4%. A lower number is better here, just like on the last page. You're the gold bar on the right. You are below each of the various medians that we've shown here. So yes, you theoretically would have some capacity and still fall within these metrics. Make sense? Page 65, this affordability analysis, it's hard to see on the screen. This is setting up the discussion for how you pay for it, but I think it's helpful to pause here because you look at your existing debt service picture, which is column B. That's the same numbers we looked at a few pages earlier. You're at about 350,000 in 22, that steps down. If you took on no additional debt and you simply measure that against what you're setting aside in your budget, which is about 350,000 for 22, those match each other, right? Column G, we're just saying, all right, if you kept that budgeted number exactly the same for every year in perpetuity, what does that look like against your existing debt service picture? And what we're just simply showing in column J is as your existing debt service steps down, you naturally would have a little bit of room to take on additional projects based off the assumption that you don't change your budget. So your budget, your revenue number stays the same, your expenditure steps down, you do have a little bit of room that naturally occurs as a result, which is a good thing. It allows you to take on additional things, just like you've been doing with your rolling stock. You know, every year, your payments have been roughly the same, and as old pieces rolled off, you've been able to take on some new stuff. But bigger picture, if you think about the revenue you're setting aside right now, about 350,000 over 10 years, that's about 3.5 million, rough math. Your existing debt service takes up about 1.2 million of that. So that only leaves about 2.3 million of room to take on your capital improvement program without any new revenues. And that's going to be important when we talk about taking on 20 million of projects. The existing room isn't there just to take on that order of magnitude. Does that still make sense? Very good. The other side of the equation, cash, another avenue, you know, after factoring in potential grants, cash and debt are kind of your two levers here. Good news here from an existing picture, a lot of numbers on the page, not going to go through it, but this tells a good story. Looking back since 2014, revenues versus expenditures, line 24 here on page 67, your revenues have exceeded your expenditures every year, which is great. Now that's before transfers and some other items, but as you go down to line 34, your net change in fund balance has also been positive, with the exception of 2020. There was a slight step down in fund balance, but as you can see, your ending fund balance has grown over the last 5+, 6+ years, which is great. We do have 2021 estimated in here. It's early in the process, but we're just giving you that for perspective from some information we got from town staff. Appears to be a good year, but still a long way to go in finalizing that audit, which we realize. But your fund balance has more than doubled over this horizon. That certainly affords you some more flexibility as it relates to funding capital. Page 12. This is very important to the policy you recently put in place about a year or so ago. So unassigned fund balance, that most flexible bucket you have, you set a minimum target in the 25 to 30% range, right? And so if you're talking about an $8 million budget, just rounding off, that 30% would be about 2.4 million. You ended 2020 at 3.4 million unassigned. So that's about $1 million over your minimum policy that you got right now. Now, as your budget grows, you need to have a bigger number to maintain that minimum. But just trying to keep it, bigger picture, at the end of 2020, you had about $1 million of room above that policy that you would put in place for whatever purpose you deem appropriate. Certainly, capital could be a part of that. Does that make sense? And then lastly, on your peer comps, a lot of information on the page, which I'll let you digest at your own leisure, but I think the most important picture here is the bottom right. Your unassigned fund balance as a percentage of your revenues was right about 44, 45%. You compared very favorably with that same group of peers on fund balance. Even if you were at that 30% level, which is that blue dotted line, you would be right in balance with most of the peers that are shown. Okay. All right, so now the fun. More small numbers. So page 71 of your packet, this is the updated capital improvement plan. This goes through 2030. As Roy alluded to earlier, this has been updated. 2022 has been rolled off. That's been funded. So this is 23 through 30. We've sorted the top by project use. So it's first by department, alphabetically, airport down through streets. You can see the project listed in the second column, and then the amounts shown across with the date string at the very top. So each column is a different year, 23 through 30. We've color coded it in a few different ways. I think the most important color coding here is that gold highlight. That's where there's been identified by staff a potential grant funding source for all or a portion of that project. You'll note all of the airport projects have a gold funding, which makes sense by the nature of those projects. But you can see where some of the other potential grant funding is noted. That gets rolled up at the bottom under sources of funds. 23 and 24 are grants. We broke out airport separate from other potential grant funding sources just to give you some perspective there. But those two combined for about 10 million. That's a moving target we get. But that is where, when you look at the total uses of funds of about 30 million, you take away the grant funding of about 10 million, potential grant funding of about 10 million, that leaves you with a delta of about 20 million over this horizon. So that's the same number I was talking to earlier. For purposes of building on this discussion and talking about affordability, how you might pay for it, we made some general assumptions about that 20 million. The smaller projects we assume get funded with cash. The larger projects we've assumed get funded with debt. You can run as many scenarios, and we're happy to run scenarios as to that balance. But the big picture takeaway is there is a delta here that we're trying to get our arms around, and whether it's all cash funded or all debt funded or some balance, which usually is the best way to approach it, you still have the same big picture takeaway, which we're going to get to in a minute here. I'm going to skip over some of the next few pages, just trying to be mindful of time. This is just laying out in the bottom right that delta. We flipped the table, but the table is helpful to give you some perspective about what is getting debt funded, totally based off assumptions we made, and we're happy to change on, and what is being funded with cash to get you to that total in the bottom right of about 20 million over this horizon. The larger projects, we've assumed we're able to debt fund with a longer life, like a fire station that's, a physical asset. You have the ability to stretch that, match the asset life with a longer term amortization. We feel good about the assumptions in terms of them being attainable in here. Certainly, if you have a USDA partner or another partner that allows you to have a lower interest rate or stretch it over a longer period of time, that could help the picture. But for purposes of the discussion here, we made general assumptions that we feel comfortable about, at least for a planning purpose on interest rate, amortization term, those types of things. Once again, happy to run different iterations of it, but this is to try and give you some perspective on it. So if you flip to page 74, I'll stop talking after I get through this page here in a minute. We're revisiting the same concept of trying to match up revenues and expenditures. So column B is your existing debt service. That has not changed. We have added in columns C and D based off this funding plan, which is some level of assumed debt, some level of assumed pay-go. Those are all cash requirements or expenses. They get rolled up and totaled in column F. So those are our total requirements. And as you just look at the numbers, they step up pretty heavily from the current number of about 350,000 all the way up to close to 2 million a year. Okay. When you match that against column G, which is just a simple assumption of you don't change your budget in terms of what you're setting aside for debt and capital of about 350,000, you get a pretty significant delta, which is what column J is showing. That's our estimated shortfall. And for purposes of this page, what we're trying to illustrate is that is the additional revenue that would be required to fund the plan based off the assumptions in here, based off the projects that are in here. Column J is the focus. The rest of this page is trying to equate that to a tax equivalent impact. Not suggesting that that's the answer, just trying to put it in layman's terms of what is your current value of a penny, which is about 60,000. That's improved substantially with your reval, which is great. But if you were to fund that delta, we're trying to equate it to values of pennies. And as you can see here in column N, those are, we're showing them as they're needed, but those total up at the bottom to a total of 22.9 pennies, which is a huge number, and we get it. This is just for illustration and to try and put some perspective around it. There are some other ways that you can look at it as well, and in the bottom right, for hypothetical example, the total would go down if you had more of an upfront revenue infusion, or you adjusted a budgetary impact to start setting aside money now. That would reduce the tax equivalent impact from about 23 pennies down to 18.7. It's not a huge difference, but that's what we're trying to illustrate there, is if you started setting more money aside, the tax equivalent impact does go down because you're setting dollars aside and funding, basically building reserves to help fund that delta. So let me just pause there. I know it's been a lot of information. We have a couple other scenarios to illustrate how the pieces can move a little bit, or if you chipped in some fund balance, how it would change. But let me see if there are any questions at this stage.
I got a question on something you didn't want to address.
Absolutely.
But I need to talk about it so I can get prepared for January 3. And that's the interplay between utilities funding and capital improvement funding. As many months ago, we had a meeting similar to this, where we're presented with a very large number on the utility side, 43 million needed for water and wastewater. So I guess one question I have is, given that we're in a tier 3, and I know some of these funding opportunities are hopefully with grants, but if we qualify for grants on one fund, is it going to adversely affect potential grant funding on the other fund?
No, whenever they look at debt service, it is my understanding, is what we've been through previously. They do look at the fund and the revenue source that would be providing the payment options and or plan for that. They also consider if you do have any additional grant funding that is available. So, yes, your general fund has to sustain itself based upon all of your taxation, basically, and/or revenues, through the state. But on the enterprise side, those are sustainable, yes, through your water and sewer revenues,
Right.
based upon rates, as well as what opportunities are available for funding.
So the grants are totally separate, and they won't look at the town as a whole and penalize us because we got grant A in the general fund. They won't then say, well, we're not going to give you grant B on the enterprise. We won't get prejudiced if we've already
Correct.
qualified for a grant.
Correct, because it is two separate projects, as well as, I think even if you are looking inside of the same fund, for the general fund or enterprise, I think the funding agencies look at that as though it is a separate project. What do you already have for your revenue sources for that one? And we'll be talking about this coming up here in just a little bit, a couple of items down that play into the same scenario.
Okay.
So, but yes, they would certainly evaluate those separately.
Any other questions? So just quickly looking at the other couple scenarios, once again, just as you brainstorm or as we revisit this in January, showing the impact of starting to look at changing the revenue picture. So scenario one is just you keep your 350,000 budgeted revenue flat, don't change it, but keep it level in perpetuity. Scenario two, as noted in that gold banner at the top, we assumed, okay, what if you grew that number at 2% annually? And this is what we were talking with town staff about. How does that impact this capital funding scenario? And you can see it helps. If you're just going to scroll to the bottom line at the bottom of column M, it does reduce that figure from just shy of 23 pennies down to 21.7. It's still a big number, but that certainly helps, narrow the gap in this equation. One thing I did mean to mention, I apologize, on the prior page, the scenario one estimated tax equivalent of 23 pennies. When we looked at this in March, that number was 31.7. Certainly your reval helps that, but also the revised capital plan has brought that number in pretty significantly. I apologize, I meant to say that earlier. And then scenario three is building on scenario two. So you grow your budgeted revenue at 2%, and then you also set aside $1 million. Once again, this was something we were talking about with town staff, ties into that earlier discussion about your fund balance, unassigned fund balance being roughly $1 million over the policy level. So hypothetically, if you infuse that over a 5-year period into column H, it helps reduce the need for additional revenues for several years. The total of column N is the same, but once again, the benefit is it helps push out the need for those additional revenues or a tax equivalent impact for a few additional years. So those are some of the variables that we can play with. Like I said, we're happy to and plan to run some additional scenarios based off feedback that we get from you all, and happy to discuss it further. Any other questions? Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay,
Next we have,
Pam Barr, 2004 recommendations, and Jack is, I'll turn that over to you, page 86.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, board members. Tonight, I'm just going to do a quick introduction and let our chair of the Downtown Advisory Committee do the presentation. Just to give you a little background, how we got to where we are tonight. In the memo, I provided a Just a quick timeline. July of 2018, the town board established a committee. Since then, they have established a mission statement. There is a map, a downtown map that was adopted by the board as well. And priorities were submitted in 2019, 2020, and now we're in 2021. So this will be our third year of submitting priorities. Rich has and I, and the board, the committee, excuse me, have put together a presentation, and I'll turn it over to Rich. to represent. Jennifer, you can drive the,
You should be able to.
All right. Pro Tem, Commissioners, Town staff, thanks for the opportunity to come before you again with our annual list of recommendations for improving downtown. We're very appreciative of the work that the town staff has done, especially Jack's department, Public Works as well, in supporting the committee with research, planning presentations, those types of organizational things. Also, we're very grateful for your action on our recommendations last year. Many of them are in place already. Point out especially the minimum non-residential code that was adopted, which has already been leading to some improvements in downtown properties and properties elsewhere in the town. So town now has some tools to address some of these longstanding issues with buildings, in disrepair, abandoned, whatever. Going through the process real quickly that we go through, beginning in January, we do some brainstorming. We always have a list, list on the back page of things that we haven't recommended yet because we think it needs more consideration on our part. We start with that. We do some brainstorming through August. We do a lot of research, discussion of what the priorities should be. By the end of August, we come up with our draft list of recommendations. This year, we made a very concerted effort to elicit feedback, input from downtown business owners and property owners. We sent out a letter, I forget how many of them, Jack?
About 200.
200 or 300. With our list of recommendations, our draft list of recommendations, and asked for input. We had a meeting, a Zoom meeting, invited people in September, end of September. Didn't have a lot of people turn out, but we did make sure that everybody was aware of the meeting. Based on that input, the committee then took a look at what we had drafted. We prioritized it. We came up with our presentation, which brings us here tonight. So with that, I'll just get started. We've broken it up into three. Try it again. There we go. We've broken it up into three areas of funding, two areas of funding, one of no cost recommendations. This first slide with the recommendations for ongoing funding. These are things that the town is already doing. And I know when it comes to budget planning time, there's always questions about, do we still need to do this for certain items? And we would just like to put in our 2 cents or more that, yes, these things are still high priority for downtown development. The new planner position in the Planning Community Development Department, increased police presence downtown, building rehab grants, facade grants, keeping the streets swept. There's money for it, but it's not apparently always being done. Public Works has been doing a regular program of sidewalk replacements, and we'd like that to continue. A number of us attend the Main Street Conference here in North Carolina. It was a Zoom conference. We got a lot of good information from that, from other towns and what they're doing. And then the Main Street Downtown Associate Program. So eventually we would like to become a downtown associate community. First step towards becoming a Main Street community.
They have not opened up the application process for that for a number of years now. And we think they may be doing it in 2022, so we'd like to keep that budget line on there when that comes available. Just some quick slides here with some of the building rehab. This is not Siler City, but some of the types of things that are done with the building rehab grants. These are for structural, interior, those type air conditioning, plumbing types of improvements. Facade grants, you're all familiar with those. Street sweeping, you can see some of the things that have not been taken care of over time. Again, this is one of those things that you're in downtown, you may not be looking at specifically, but if you're driving through, it just gives a general impression of neglect. We'd like to make sure that that impression is not there. As I mentioned, sidewalk replacement on the right, there's something that's been done on Chatham Avenue, and on the left, that's on East 2nd Street, where it's in major need of replacement. Another category is recommendations for new ongoing funding. One of the big things that we talked about was the town taking responsibility for maintaining Chatham Avenue. It's a state road right now, so DOT has quite a bit of control over what happens on Chatham Avenue. And as we're looking to improve downtown, some of the things that we would like to do locally aren't necessarily are the things we have to either beg, cajole, whatever, the Department of Transportation to approve. And some of the things we've been looking at in terms of streetscape, that type of thing, are not necessarily the types of things that fit into the normal DOT way of operating. So for example, one of the things we had recommended a number of years ago, we were talking about recommending, was to have some interesting pedestrian markings on the street. Well, DOT says no, they got one or the other. I think they gave you two choices. So we have to drop that. Sidewalk dining, they would have to approve that. They have the right of way on both sides of the street. Truck traffic, we've been taking a look at that, and again, we have to work with them to do that. And something like this is a small town in Michigan. We were there in the summer, and can't see it clearly, but those are business signs directing people to various businesses in the downtown. According to DOT regulations, we can't do that. The only wayfaring signs downtown can be for municipal.
More general, like farmer's market or city hall, or library. You can't get very specific.
So all of these things combined, we would like to take a look at the town considering maintaining, taking over responsibility for Chatham Avenue. At this point, the major costs that we've identified immediately would be maintaining the traffic lights, and I think that was a little over $5,000 a year. The other costs would have to do with eventually paving, those kinds of improvements, cleaning the storm drains, those types of things. We need to get more figures on exactly what that might cost. This would really set us up, especially as we start to look at streetscape, for doing what the town wants and not having to go to DOT for a lot of approvals. This came up at our board meeting, at our committee meeting. Sanford and Lee County they're already done this, and discussion earlier about broadband availability, providing free Wi-Fi downtown. Cost of that would be, I think there's an initial cost of $20,000. At least this is what Sanford paid, and annual cost of about $13,000. But again, an attraction to bring people into downtown. If you've been downtown and tried to use cellular service or whatever, good luck somewhere else. Or not. Let's see. This is a North Carolina association that, again, we're trying to connect with our peers and our colleagues across the state. This is a advocacy, education, networking group. I believe it's the dues are something like $175 a year. We would add that. We'd like to add that in. We've learned a lot over the years from different field trips to towns in North Carolina. Taking a look at what they've done, you see an example of that coming up in a minute. And so again, a small budget for meals and that type of thing, but really we probably be driving ourselves most of the time. Downtown dumpsters. This was a question raised by a downtown business owner and property owner about with the new residential areas coming into downtown, and the new residential developments coming into downtown, how that's going to affect the capacity of the downtown dumpsters and the schedule for emptying them. So we'd like to make sure that in fact those are secure, so there's not illegal dumping, and that that they provide the services that are needed for both the residential and the business folks downtown. We look at recommendations for new one-time funding. We have 4 things here. Really 3 studies and one item that's coming back. Stormwater engineering study. We have a problem along 2nd Street. It stretches all the way from probably before 2nd Avenue down to past the incubator, North Carolina Arts Incubator. We've had, on the left-hand side, the building on the right is the Belk building, old Belk building. The concrete pad on the left is the store that we own. All the people along this stormwater system have had to do something to keep their basements dry. And it continues to be, you can't see it in here, but there are pipes coming out, pumping water out of the basements constantly. It runs from city service over on 2nd Avenue. The incubator has to do stuff. We've put in, I think, $15,000 to seal off or at least pump out the water in our place. Other people have done the same thing. What we would like to do is have an engineering study to see what could happen, how that situation can be improved. Not to mention it's ugly as well. A parking study. We talk a lot about downtown parking in the committee, and sometimes it feels like whack-a-mole. If we do this, then this pops up, if we do that, something else pops up. What we would really like to do is long-term vision is to update downtown parking so that it serves both customers and businesses downtown. We've had business owners complain that their clients customers can't come into the business because business employees are parking on the street all day, despite the 2-hour parking signs. And the whopping $5 fine if you violate that. So rather than continue to pick at little things, what we're recommending is a parking study. Jack has talked to a number of different firms. What was the
amount I chose by the committee was 25,000.
25,000. So that's kind of in between some of the higher ones and the lower ones. But we would like to take care of that once and for all, to take a comprehensive look at parking rather than trying to neglect it. This was a study that was done about 2 years ago, I think it was, by the Triangle J. And they gave us some ideas on how to, about what's available and how it might be improved. One of the things that keeps coming up in our discussions with various people is, can't we bury the power lines? And so we've talked to Duke Energy about that, looked into it, and what they are recommending that they do an engineering study. It's $15,000 engineering study to come up with the costs of what it would take to bury the power lines. And again, this would probably be part of a larger streetscape proposal and do everything at once rather than dig everything up 2 or 3 times to do it. But this would give us a figure going into that streetscape planning about what it would cost to bury the power lines. This is a holdover from last time. Earlier in the new year, Jack's going to be working with a firm to help us write a grant, help the town write a grant for a USDA grant to come up with construction drawings for a streetscape plan. Depending on whether or not we're successful with that, we might have to go back for a second time based on comments that we've received if we're not successful. We wanted to have that in the budget just in case it's needed. It's about $4,000 to put together the grant. Then we have a number of recommendations for no-cost projects. Duke will paint poles for free. The utility poles downtown, they're in terrible shape. So just a small thing that makes the town look like it's neglecting the downtown could be improved at no cost. The big question here is, what color do you paint them? Everybody has their opinion. I think black is the recommendation from the downtown. A little classier. East Beaver Street property. What we've talked about and what we've just see in a minute is the possibility of using this as a permanent farmers market event venue. It's really great to see the large tree there being decorated for the holidays. And we have a person in town, business owner, who's had some experience doing feasibility studies, and she's agreed to do a feasibility study about what might happen with this property. And I think you have to do this, Jennifer, don't you?
Yes.
You click on, this is in Reedsville. A little bit more probably than what we would want to do, but it's only a 30-second video there. You can just click it in the PowerPoint.
I have to stop it because
Okay.
it's being shared.
Oh, okay. Again, it's probably more ambitious than what we might want to do here, but we want to do something that's in keeping with what Siler City wants. I didn't touch anything. So that's a no-cost item. She's agreed to do that pro bono for us, and we'll be looking at it as that comes along in the new year. The next thing is, as we had discussions during the year, sometimes things come up that we would like the town staff to maybe take a look at, do some research into, whatever. As our resolution is currently written, we come to you once a year. We'd like to come to you in July with not budget, no cost types of things, so that we don't have to wait another 6 months to a whole year to bring some of these things about that can happen more quickly. Jack, you might want to talk about this a little bit, the City Hall landscaping plan.
So I had a conversation with the committee, and the committee asked me to take a look at this. We were looking at many different avenues. One would be to hire a consultant to do a landscape plan for City Hall. The idea came up, what about contacting the folks at Chatham Central? They have a program, and
the professor's name is leaving me right this second. But he's agreed to have a class entertain a landscape plan exercise and share that with the town for no charge. I have managed to lose us here, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Talk through some of these as we're getting back to it. The next one has to do with the Siler City Mills property. And what we would like to do, I believe right now it is zoned light industrial. That's correct, Jack? Light industrial. City Mills. Yes. We'd rather not see it as an industrial area right downtown. So we're asking the board to approve looking into rezoning that. So that it is a combination commercial, residential, parking and that type of thing. Jack has already reported, I believe, to the board about work that's been done by UNC, TFI, and I don't remember what TFI stands for, with some preliminary plans and looking for to put something together that could be handed to a developer as something that the town would want to pursue. In this case, it's a combination of residential, commercial with parking. This is the area behind the arts incubator in that part of North Chatham. This is a schematic of what they were thinking of. The railroad tracks run from middle left to the bottom center. So that area that's shaded in colors, the red, the yellow, and the darker blue is the area that they were looking at as a possible development opportunity. So we're trying to make this attractive to developers, and one of the ways of doing that would be to rezone, especially before somebody takes advantage of the light industrial that it's currently zoned in. Again, incentivizing downtown multifamily developments, recommending a UDO amendment that will exempt the open space and recreational requirement for large downtown residential development. So if something like that happens at Siler City Mills, we'd like to exempt them from having to provide the recreational and open space requirements. Historic preservation, we did a lot of work on this year that we can share more with you. There's a whole process, state process of going through historical preservation, local historical preservation commission, local historical district, design guidelines, that type of thing. And what the committee decided was that what we needed to do, first of all, was to do some education in town. And so we were recommending that the staff start to have presentations for downtown business owners and property owners. There are implications. And as a business owner downtown, I know what some of those implications are. They could be costly. So before we recommend something, we think that we need a lot more input, a lot more education on within town to see how we can go about working on the preservation of the historic buildings in town. So rather than jump right into it with a recommendation to have a historical commission and having a local historical district, everything that all the things that come with that, we'd like to do some more work on that before that. This is a recurring thing. If we can get rid of the shopping dispensers in front of the post office, they're makes it hard to open the car door and they're ugly. And there's an ongoing issue with the rolling carts downtown. Businesses aren't always supposed to be taking them off the street, and we've interpreted that as off the sidewalk. Once things are done, once they're empty, but in fact they are being kept on the street. So this is more of an enforcement recommendation that we'd like to present than anything else. And so that's what we have as our list of recommendations for this coming year. Again, as I said last time I was I presented to folks, we see downtown as not a entity unto itself, but that what we do to improve downtown is going to improve the rest of the town, make it more attractive for new businesses, residents, as well as for existing businesses and folks who live and work in Chatham. This is not downtown advisory committee, but I'll show it to you anyway. The Merchants Association, Siler City Merchants Association has put together a rack card for Siler City. Currently we've been giving out a lot of them because I've only got 3 left here. But they're at the Norlina Visitors Welcome Center, up on 85, I think. And they're going to be put in the County Visitor Center in Pittsburgh as well. So it's a little incentive for people to come and visit Siler City. Happy to answer any questions.
Didn't really not a question here, but they want to thank you and the advisory committee, what y'all doing downtown. About a couple of weeks ago, I know I was riding around downtown. I'm saying this to the board and the manager. And I was riding downtown, went down to town a little bit. And this lady, she's been sleeping out down the street and stuff out there. She had probably about 6 to 7, 8 black bags. I mean, it just makes the town look bad. I know that the community has been out there trying to help this lady. I thank the police department have been out there trying to help this lady, but she keep coming back.
She's there tonight.
But we need to do something to keep her from out there, people from keep coming back, because what she's doing and really doing is making the town look bad.
There are 2 individuals that are chronic residents on the streets of downtown. And we have been talking to the police department. The chief has been working on it. Clergymen in town have been working on it, whatever. It's just it's a sad situation.
Yeah, it is sad.
But they're both kind of falling through the cracks of eligibility and need. So
they kind of make the business and stuff look kind of bad, hanging around out there as well. I think I found something what we can do to. Sometimes I just wonder when I came through that, what did she use the bathroom at? Where did she go take a bath at? Where she change clothes?
And
No, I'm
no, add on to what you
No, wait a
said,
minute. Go ahead.
that, and Mr. Siler is exactly correct. And, I think a whole lot, my understanding with an example that we have before us is that the individuals have means. And, it's not a situation where, destitute or anything like that. It's, for lack of a better term, it's more of a mental health issue. And I think there won't be an easy solution to it or an easy fix to it. But I do think it is something that we need to spend some time on as a board and maybe do some research and have an avenue, because if we don't, it's going to get continually worse. And, I don't mean to sound crass or, or anything like that, or, non-sympathetic, but we do need to look into it and start having some kind of avenue to do something some way or another. If nothing else, what's going to happen, we have one of these gets down to 10 degrees one night, it has a potential for freezing to death, all kinds. And there's no shelters or anywhere for them to be taken in or anything. But I do think we need to have us look into it. I'm glad you brought that up. It's definitely something we need to tackle. I don't think we can address it tonight, but I do think we need to start gathering some information. And this is one of your things that you work with some in, Mr. Booth.
Some, but not as much. We do have like the homeless population, and we work, we do have the homeless education and all of that, but I think it kind of falls in line with some of the policy changes and the things that we were talking about as far as doing a shelter and all of that. So it'll fall into that. But again, like you brought up with the mental health issues. So, you know, with our mental health system is not what it used to be. And so therefore, there are a lot of people who are out there that don't have places to go, people to help look after them, or that they may have people who are there to help them, but they refuse the assistance. So it's just a.
And I think that's the situation in this case, that there are people that are willing to help. And I know, again, that Chief Wagner has done a whole lot of work, trying to work with different social service agencies, whatever, to help resolve the issues for these two women. But apparently legally, there's very little that can be done. Can't outlaw homelessness.
And at the same time, we're putting more burden back on our police department. Something that doesn't really fall into their category, and they are doing a wonderful job.
And they've been doing a good job when we call them about things like this.
Yeah. So I just think we ought to look into it at another time. I appreciate you bringing that up.
It might be a good time to bring it up.
Yeah.
Richard, I just, first of all, thank you for everything you guys do. Siler City Downtown Advisory Committee, Skidoo. It's come along, downtown's come a long way. But I want to talk to you about a few things I've heard. I'm trying to visualize a picture in my head of Siler City downtown long term. I've heard you talk about taking over Chatham Avenue. I've heard you talk about walkability. I've heard you talk about eating outside, parking, burying the utility poles, and a lot of those things run together. They're not. You don't address this one, then do that one, then do that one. You have to look at it as a whole. And really, when you were speaking, two things came into my head. Fayetteville Street in Raleigh, which used to, that used to be a street, traffic up and down. And they closed it, and they paved it. It's walkable, there's no parking, and there's shops on both sides. Another one is downtown New Bern. Had the pleasure of visiting there towards the end of the summer. And on Friday and Saturday nights, they close downtown. They take up a rope out to the middle of the road, and all the restaurants that they're allowed to put there. Right. And the reason I bring it up is because obviously there's no parking down there. There's no parking spots. The sidewalks are larger. So you can actually fit, yes, they're allowed to use the street, but you can actually fit, tables and chairs on the sidewalks. So if we're looking at something like that, where it's walkable and you can eat and have entertainment downtown, then when we're looking at a parking study that's going to be 25,000, are we looking at keeping spots from 3rd to Raleigh, or are we looking at getting rid of those spots? And if we're getting rid of the spots, where are we putting them? Are we, because I love this idea for the Reedsville Market Square at Beaver Street, but if so, it just seems like some of the other goals, we have to have compatibility amongst all the goals. And if we're going to make downtown walkable, and if we're going to make sidewalks large enough to eat off of, which means because they're not currently large enough, we're going to have to take away spots. If we take away spots, where are we going to put them? So
We've looked at some of that, some of those possibilities, and part of it is just a larger holistic streetscape
Have we
plan.
looked at Beaver Street property as being a parking lot? I mean, I know it doesn't look good, it's not, aesthetically pleasing.
We're looking at best use
Mhm.
for it, and we're not sure that that's the best use. We'll see. But we did come up with a framework, which we would share with the parking study, just very brief. It's less than a page. One would be to prioritize parking on the main downtown streets for customers, visitors, and deliveries.
Mhm.
That would be Chatham from Beaver to Third, Raleigh from Second to Birch, and Second from Second Avenue to Birch.
What are those streets again? Raleigh from where?
Raleigh from Second Avenue to Birch Avenue. Second Street from Second Avenue to Birch.
Take away or add the parking?
Prioritize the parking, do some enforcement. So there's a 2-hour time limit. Maybe it should be a 3-hour time limit when customers come into town.
On Second Street and Birch Street,
Right, between Second Avenue and Birch.
Second Avenue.
So again, and this is just conceptual more than anything else. And then we would have time limits for parking to discourage long-term parking by business and office owners and employees, which people are not going to like. Just cost of fines, discourage violations, adequate handicap accessible parking spots, and adequate loading areas. But use that as a base for how we might work on those streets. Then have the town provide free off-street parking for customers, visitors, business owners, and employees. People are parking on the street now, and you're telling them they can't. You've got to give them an alternative.
And that's
so
why I
the-
was asking, do we develop Beaver Street into a parking place to
Well,
give
that's-
people alternatives and then they walk to whatever store they want to go to?
That's one of the possibilities. The other, there's space, the Campbell property. This is behind city service.
Mhm.
There's some parking available that could be available there. We've talked to them and they're willing to talk about it. The Far Out Incorporated property behind the North Carolina Arts Incubator, before any development might happen, that could be used for parking. Property between Birch Avenue and the railroad tracks. I talked to the railroad about that. But in a number of towns, you've got that where you've got barrier between the tracks and then you've got parking.
I guess. a
And
lot
that's
of it-
close enough to downtown. And then the Wren Industries property west of Chatham Avenue between Third and Fourth. Those are areas that we've identified.
So I guess a lot of it is this, what is the 10, 20-year vision that the advisory committee has? What do they literally and figuratively want downtown to look like? And how do we
move towards it?
how do we move towards it?
Yep.
What steps are complementary of that we take 2 or 3 at a time? And what things do we do one at a time? And so I think that's what we gotta look at, particularly when it comes to funding. Because on the $25,000 parking study, I'd like to fund that once if possible. So I'd like to, so that's where you get into, well, what is the vision long term?
Right.
Are we gonna keep it the way it is? And if we keep it the way it is, what are we giving up? If we want some of the things you've mentioned, then other stuff has to be given up. So for me, I'm just having trouble in my head. That picture is like one of these old Polaroids that doesn't get enough sun and it's real faded, it's hard to see, versus a new iPhone 13 picture. So I'm having trouble visualizing what the advisory committee is looking for long-term downtown.
And we had a pro bono study that they did with some ideas. So we've had some ideas. There have been other committees, task forces, whatever you want to call them, in the past 10, 15 years that have come up with ideas and conceptual drawings. What we've been focusing on, frankly, is low-hanging fruit. There's a lot of things that needed to be done.
Yeah, and it looks a lot better.
And that's relatively reasonable to.
And there's still
to
some
fund.
low-hanging fruit.
And there's still some, but what we would really like to do with the streetscape planning now is to move into just that kind of vision that you're talking about.
And I think there's some more low-hanging fruit that we can knock out over the next year or two. That, you know, for me at least, I'd like to see a more forward-thinking.
I think one thing Rich is left out about for the division question. In 2013, the town adopted the downtown master plan,
Mhm.
and we've used that as a somewhat of a tool. Is that got age on it? Maybe it's time to
Look at it, yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I think we've seen, with development that has been going on along, Chatham Avenue and, and the work that's getting done there and along Raleigh Street. I think it is time to maybe update that because there's been a lot of work going on. I see, downtown becoming a destination and, and how do we make that happen? And how do we build out that vision?
And what does it look like? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think what it looks like, we'll get there. I think it's having a vision of what it needs to be, and then what are the steps we've got
Well,
to
that's what I'm
do to make
saying.
that happen.
When I say what does it look like, I mean, what is that vision?
Yeah.
And we have to be on the same page about that vision. The advisory committee and the board, we all have to be on the same page on that vision.
And once we have that vision, we can recommend very specific steps, a timeline, Gantt chart, whatever you want to call it, for what happens first, what happens second, it depends on something else. So, yeah, we're definitely looking at that, and that's one of the tasks for the coming year. But if you have specific ideas and
Those are just
other
general,
low-hanging fruit.
these are just general thoughts, but
Yeah,
we
no, I
gotta
appreciate that.
drill down, I think. Hit what low hanging fruit we can. And then start maybe like Jack and Bill says, revise that, dust off that old master plan, maybe revise it.
Anybody else have any more questions?
Thank you very much. That's right. Remember, Tim, I got one closeout item, this goes back to the memos, and that would be just, obviously the budget items, I think we're gonna see some of that in our department budgets come to you during the retreat. The no cost items, would you rather discuss those and give direction tonight, or do you want me to bring those back and give direction on those to staff? Because those, they don't have costs associated.
I mean, if there's no cost, can you just move forward with it?
Yeah.
I don't want to do it until I have the direction from the board.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Anyone else before we move on? Okay, next is, several months in tree replacement and then noise.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, Chris is going to present the part of the continued conversation that staff has been having with the board around the city hall renovations. And Chris has been working with Commissioner Price to come up with a replacement plan. And they together, I guess, will be presenting this to the board.
Gordon stole all my speech, so. Yeah, so y'all can see on schedule C-105, but we have been working on this since earlier in the year when we first started the town hall renovations. So as y'all can see, those trees out there have been neglected and overgrown. Then we shaved them, trying to make room so they're scratching cars and stuff. So they are in bad shape. So we worked, me and Commissioner Price has worked on the plan, and we've got prices from tree masters to have these removed and have the stumps removed. And then purchasing the trees, those are bit no cost. We have to move money for that. And then having Williams Lawn Care, who does our yard work in the hometown hall, put those in. And you can see in there too, we did, I did price doing wooden fences, just purchasing them, and that was us putting them in. So I did go back and check all these prices, because this has been a couple months since we've done this. And Tree Masters and Williams Lawn Care has kept their price the same, but the fence has went up. The wooden fences went up to $3,200, and the vinyl fences went up to $4,000. If I wanted to try out that option.
Will it be stained or will it be painted?
The wooden fence, we would stain that, so there would be a maintenance cost of that, and then the final portion would just be pressure wash. So there is a picture in there that Commissioner Parsons drew, and then we kind of colored it in. But
Oh, boy.
it's really,
That's great.
it didn't turn out as good on, it didn't turn out as good in there as it did.
So you guys had to color it?
Kim actually
Is
does.
it, are you saying that Commissioner Price couldn't stain a line?
We couldn't trust him to stay.
You know, Chip, they didn't have an opening in jail for art.
There you go.
The purpose of that drawing was just to show y'all how we would stagger, how the trees would be staggered, which it doesn't really show up in the picture once we put it in the paper there. But there is, further in there is a before, but I guess the next one is a recommendation, is what we'd like to see, and then, of course, what it is now. And then there is 2 attachments of the type of trees that we would like to use.
So how many trees are you planning on putting back in it?
There'll be 16 trees going back. And they're quite a bit smaller than what's in there now, so we were able to add. And it would completely make a complete wall. And I think mature height is 6 to 8 foot. So they wouldn't be nowhere near as tall as they are, but it'll be tall enough to block service station.
There, and there's that flagpole there at the service station. Is there a setback there that needs to get moved?
I guess that would be. That's
Grandfather.
That is theirs, yeah. That's,
It's been there forever.
Been there forever.
And we don't have any setbacks on flagpoles, not I'm aware of.
it does sometimes look like it belongs to us. but
Yeah, I know. I've had people ask about it
I have too.
specifically.
So Chris, what you need from us is a motion to approve the trees, and you need to know what type of fence that the board is.
Well, I'd like to do the trees, but if y'all didn't want to do the trees, the fence was gonna be an option over the trees, but I would prefer trees.
Well, you can't do fence entries like.
I think they're gonna do fence entry, but it's about 50.
Yeah.
Picture says fence entry.
Yeah.
They
I
are-
got you. I got you.
Yeah, if you notice on the hand-drawn picture there, if you'll notice that the trees, you have 2 different varieties of trees, but you have pictures of. And you also notice they're in a stagger. They're not in a line. And
It's
when
not
they-
drawn to scale.
No, not on the scale. I could have, but I didn't. So they'll be staggered. And the reason he put the fence option in there, when they first set them out, there'll be considerable amount of space between them. But as they grow and mature and they blossom out, they'll eventually fill in, and it'll be a solid massive greenery. Now, that'll take 3 or 4 years for that to happen. But that will happen over time.
I imagine that was the reason those others were put, they were let go, they wouldn't trend back like they were supposed to.
Well, they're the wrong variety too. They're
Too
mature
big a
height
tree to be-
20 to 30 feet, and these are not that way. So the fence thing, it would look good initially for a few years, but eventually they're going to come together, and you really won't be able to see it from the city hall side, but they would be able to see it from the other side. But it could, I forgot how much distance between the trees and the fence is going to be. You know, off the top of your head,
I don't remember off the top of my head.
we could run into a maintenance situation once the shrubbery blossoms and matures and
If
fills
you done
out.
both, it'd probably eventually have to take the fence out. If you done
Yeah.
both.
Let's just do the trees. Then.
I would prefer just.
I would just.
Well, the picture showing back here, I thought we were doing a fence and trees.
Yeah, that's.
So the front line of trees are those the forever goldies, and the back line is the blue junipers.
We could do them either way, but that was the plan, was to do the goldens up front, just because they have provided more color.
Let's do that. Yeah, that looks good.
All right, so you need a motion to approve the trees, is that correct, Chris?
Yes, ma'am.
So moved.
All in favor?
Uh,
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Right, next is Roy, the water treatment plant project, page 111.
Mayor Pro Tem, board tonight, you have before you on page 112 of the agenda packet, a budget amendment, which it's needed for the updated numbers on the water treatment plant project. The project was originally budgeted for and approved back in fiscal year 2018. And since that time, with the increase in construction cost and project cost, we are now at a shortfall of $985,000. As the board is aware, back in August, we put out the bid for the second phase of the project. When that project was awarded, the low bidder had not followed the processes completely, and therefore we had a challenge to the award of that bid. So back in September, we had the board to reject the bid that was awarded, and we put it back out to bid again. That was the cleanest process that we could go through to award the second phase. With that, the award or the bids that came in are on page 115. Of that, once again, the lowest bidder was $5,290,000. And I do want to point out that we do have David Honeycutt with us tonight, the engineer, if the board has any additional questions about the second phase and or the process, the ones that or the bids that were analyzed and anything that happened prior to this last award. In his letter, he states on page 13, if you look in the third paragraph, halfway down, he has the town is currently applying for additional assistance from DWI SRP, which is the state revolving fund loan. However, in order to expedite the approval of the construction and stay within the timeline of awarding the bid, it's recommended that the town make the funds available for the shortfall. What staff is recommending in this budget amendment is that we utilize the ARP funding that we received as the shortfall amount until such time if we are able to realize any additional grant funding that may be available. Now, I will say, previously, we had already received the award for the state funding, the grant, which was $2.3 million. Half of that was a loan, which was $2.3 million. And then the $600,000 through Golden League. We did reach back out to Golden League to see if there were any additional funds available for this project. And they said it would not be available for this project because it had already been awarded. So therefore, we know that is not a possibility. However, we need to look at this as though it is a shortfall in total, and that the town needs to make up for that. Now, in recognizing what these ARP funds are, they're technically grant funds as well that are coming through this or from the federal government to the state, and we can say that these funds are being used as strictly adhered to in the guidelines that had been put out for infrastructure, utilities, water, sewer. So we received our first payment was approximately $1.3 million in ARP funding. We have used approximately at this point, I think Oh, yeah, $120,000. 87,000 was where we funded the nonprofits. And then the thermal imagers for the fire department, which was in the amount of 32,000. So currently, if we use these funds, if the board so desires, and we use the 985,000 to cover the shortfall, we still will have 205,000 left over from the initial appropriation that we received for this year. Yes, sir.
Following, we put this out originally for bid and got a price. And there was some discrepancy, something, had to take that back and rebid it. Okay. First question is it the same people this time it was before?
It is.
Well, is there any recourse, we were there, now we're here, is there any recourse to recoup some of that? Because of the bidding, lack in the bidding process?
No, sir. We, once the bid had to be rejected by the board, we had to go back out to bid again, just as though it were an initial bid.
Yeah,
Prices have increased.
yeah, I understand that, but us having to redo it was not our doing, so. That's where I was, I don't know if there's any recourse for that or not, is it? Get it. Yeah. The lawyer just says not pursue it, forget it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something we're gonna have to do. I mean, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree we're gonna have to do it, but
But we.
it wasn't our doing.
No, it wasn't, but exploring all avenues to recoup some of that, because I know we've got other projects, infrastructure projects, we can use those dollars.
One other, and I just want to point out to the board again that there is the option to seek the additional loan money through the state revolving fund that would potentially offset this 985. However, if we are going to do that, we're certainly going to increase our debt load, which is something that I do not think the board would be inclined to do at this point, based upon the fact that we are looking at the funding for the wastewater treatment plant project. And we know what the dollar amount on that is, around 17 million. So taking this up another $1 million, currently our payment on the initial 2.3 is around 117,000 a year for 20 years. If we increase that another $1 million, we're probably looking at raising that to at least 180 plus a year. And so if these ARP funds can be used for that offset and to, again, complete the funding needed for this project, then we can certainly move forward. And that's what we're trying to do without much of a delay, because if we wait too long, then we would have to go back out to bid again.
So what really needs tonight,
You directly need a motion.
he needs four. He needs four motions.
4 motions on the bottom of page 111.
I make a motion, we approve budget amendment 2022.13 as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed?
I'll make a motion that we award the bid to the Sanford contractors in the amount of $5,296,232.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed?
Make a motion to approve the resolution of tentative award.
All in favor? Any opposed?
I'll make a motion to authorize town manager to execute the contract with Sanford contractors.
Second.
All in favor? All right, moving on. Roy, is there any new business?
No,
Okay, now,
So tonight I have a couple of items to bring to the board's attention. First, just wanted to mention to the board that we did hold the first Immigrant Community Advisory Committee meeting on November the 30th. This meeting was to set the organizational agenda for the committee, and a chair was appointed, Tania Benitez, who is with the Hispanic Liaison. She will be the chair, and the vice chair is Norma Fernandez. She currently works with Chatham County in the social services area. So those two will serve for a year. And our next meeting is Tuesday, December 14th. And they set a time of 6 p.m. because we have one person that travels, that works in Raleigh. They travel an hour and a half each way, so it's a little difficult for her to get back by the 5:30 time frame that we originally set. Many of you may have noticed the work has started on Fifth Street. So we are thankful for that. Hopefully the weather will hold out and they can keep moving forward. And we'll be able to get that street reopened sometime in January. And it may be near the end, but we're keeping our fingers crossed.
He said 3 weeks today.
Did he? Okay, well, that's early. Could be first, second week of January. That would be great. We can push that time frame if the weather holds out. The another reminder: the Christmas parade will be held this Thursday evening, December the 9th at 7 p.m. We do have a truck available that the board will be able to ride on, as you have done in the past. We also have a float that the truck will be pulling. We will have town staff involved with that. The Christmas luncheon for town staff is Thursday, December the 16th. And that will be from 11:30 until 1 o'clock at Best Foods. We will have the separate meeting room over to the left when you walk in. You will not have to go through the line. The food will be served in that room. So we are looking forward to being able to get back together again and gather in one room. And we'll go through the awards and presentations and things like that as we have in the past. I do want to let the board know that the food drive that HR initiated this year, we did collect 307 food items. It was a total of 260 pounds. And those were delivered to the Western Chatham Food Pantry today. So I'm thankful for those who did donate the food items, and I know the pantry was grateful to receive those as well. And that is all I have.
William, do you have anything this morning? All right. Government body comments.
I do.
Oh,
No, you go first.
So I've been thinking, I need Jack on this one. So I've been since public comment, I've been thinking about the comments made about the stormwater runoff in the Lincoln Heights area. I'm very sensitive to that because, you know, my office is flooded from stormwater runoff. And in that area, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we brought in UNC at no charge to do a study and made some recommendations.
Not recommend.
Yeah, that was something else. Those
Was something else?
are the rainwater gardens in different areas. That was not.
Okay. Because I know they were out there testing some stuff near the office, but I mean, is there anything we can do to get some suggestions on maybe how to handle the stormwater runoff in the Lincoln Heights area?
I think so. You know, we've got some experience with a few flooding issues and how we've tried to tackle those. You're going to see some of those in the budget retreat. I'm going to share some of those if the manager allows me. And I've got a project in Lincoln Heights that has come up in the past that I was going to share with the board, and this could be tied into it as a bigger project. Because that creek, I'm not sure what title it has, but it does drain to the Rocky River. It's outside the Loves Creek watershed, so the Loves Creek group is not being focused in that area because it's not part of the Loves Creek watershed, but there are some concerns with that creek And, I've heard now at least 2 or 3 folks have issues, so we can put together a project idea, to address and review. I think anytime we're dealing with flood, we gotta get an engineer probably to help us
Yeah.
take a closer look.
So what was I thinking then on the person who came in and was talking about?
I think the mosquito thing.
No, it was rainwater, it was helping.
It was rainwater
It was
runoff.
rainwater, but it was a voluntary program where there was flower beds and things and drainage
On the sides
on
of
the
the road.
sides of the road.
And I was coming down,
Elk,
towards the park. towards
Yeah.
Boulevard.
And that's not a big watershed.
Okay.
mhm, yeah.
The stewardship, we're working on that grant currently.
And I'm sorry, I thought that was you.
No, that was something different, yeah.
Was it state?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
This is,
Sorry, Bill.
this is a 319
So you have been
grant.
called worse.
This is a 319 grant to DEQ. It's not Carolina State. They're
Okay.
helping us, the state's helping us, with the project. They're providing some engineering services. but-
Yeah. But, so if we could, reach out to some partners, maybe anybody that could address.
I made the same note earlier, so I'll definitely do that.
Thanks, appreciate it.
So I'm just going to piggyback on what Louis said, because Chris and Roy, we did walk around. So Donald's area actually falls in with District 2, no, 1, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm in District 2, and looking at my neighborhood, we have a lot of issues with our ditches, with our pipes being stopped up. So we have the water issue. When it rains really hard, the water flows, and depending on how high it gets, it flows across the road. And there has been someone who has come in, but trying to understand what it was that the person did is hard, because there was, at each end of the pipe, there was like a little hole dug, but some of the pipes were not clear. And then you have, so I can say in my yard, so I have the runoff, then I have at my pipe, at my sidewalk, they dug a hole. So the water would flow here, go down, and then go to the other end of the pipe. And then there was another hole dug here. And I'm saying, so how's the water gonna get up to go out? So I don't understand.
So who's digging all the holes?
So
It's,
We did.
Okay.
it's town staff.
Okay.
Well, sometimes when you dig a hole like that, what is it, when you're cleaning the pipe out?
So, yeah, so that's what we've done in her neighborhood right now. We've not done any ditch work, which we gotta come back and do, but we went through and cleaned all the driveway tile. So that's why there was 2 holes dug. We had to dig those out so we could blow the driveway tile out.
Yeah, what they had to do, they had to dig a hole.
well, see,
All,
that's fine.
all that in the pipe, when they clean it out, they're gonna bring that hole back up, people, in the pipe, and the water flow.
Well,
That's
but
what we
the
do
pipes are
with the state,
definitely
we do
gonna
with the
be,
state all the time.
okay. Well, just know that, at the end of the pipe, there was still trash in the pipe.
Yeah.
So, and those were just some things that we saw. And I think the last time that the ditches have been dug out, it's probably been about maybe 10 years. So that the ditches have been dug out. So,
I know you're talking about cleaning out ditches and stuff. I know, I work with state, when we go around, we can't go with so far.
Mhm.
We can't go on other people's property.
Right away.
Finish cleaning that ditch out, come down for.
The right of way is the only place you can go to, right?
No,
That's correct.
I'm kind of wondering,
Yes, sir.
it's just how it is with the state, I mean, with the town.
Yeah, yeah.
It
Yeah,
is.
but you can't go with so far, because we can't go on other people's property. To go on down and clean the ditch. I understand what you're talking about.
Well, just whatever we might be. I mean, rainwater and stormwater runoff is an issue for many parts of our town.
Anyone else have anything to say?
There's not really anything that it's not a secret anymore. I just want to let the board know that I officially decided on for mayor in this upcoming election. I put some advertising in the paper and been on the radio, just saying that I intend to do that. I can't sign up anymore, but I just thought I needed to tell y'all officially, but I'm gonna do it.
Good.
Very thorough, right?
That's correct.
There's several of us in that, so.
Well, since you said that, I'm gonna let the board know I'm not outside, not running anymore. It's gonna be my last time.
And we appreciate your services.
Absolutely.
You'll be missed.
I wish you would reconsider that.
I've been on the board since April, I think, 2003. First got here, came here, got my brother term, and I finished his term out. I tried to see could I get in on my own, and I did, and I've been here ever since. So I think it's time for me to pull out for somebody else to come in and have another some ideas and well, everybody been good to work with. I think I've been with 3 mayors and 3 town managers, so yeah, all of them been great.
There we go.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom.
Maybe Chip will draw you a gold lake ditch.
You're not wrong with that one. That's gonna keep getting brought up. Just preparing you.
Yeah, we're gonna hang in City Hall.
Gonna make it the
We
official
gotta get him
artist.
to sign, we gotta get you to sign it first, Chip, before we hang it up. Is there anything else? Because we need.
Mayor Pro Tem, I do have one item that I left off, and I'm going to turn it over to Jack. Since we have Dalton with us tonight, I wanted to let Jack introduce Dalton.
Yeah, the board was obviously, saw fit to add a new planner to the planning department. And with Nancy and Roy's help, we found somebody, and matter of fact, we found him at the job fair, Dalton York. Woodstand Dalton. Dalton's our new planner one in the town, and we got off the ground running last Monday. So,
Welcome aboard.
I don't think so.
Yeah, now Justin is, is that right?
Justin has turned in his notice. His last day was Friday. So Nancy got that advertisement out for the permit specialist position. So we're actively pursuing that now. Thank you for that, Ms. Brown.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Right, so we need, I guess, a motion to go out of open session, go into closed session. Is that correct?
A motion to go into closed
Make
session.
a motion, we're going to close session, present North Carolina General Statute 143-318, 11A3.
All in favor?
All right.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
So